I'd like to talk now about how do you like tips and tricks on how you convert a 5th edition party. Say somebody they hate 5th edition, they're done with it. They want to convert that over to ICRPG. So converting a 5e party to ICRPG, it can be tough. My biggest tip would be just convince your players to start fresh with ICRPG. But if you want to convert them over, it's really not that hard. What I've done at my table is I've taken the whole concept of classes and then thrown that out the window, right? So it allowed my characters just to come up with their idea. Like, okay, you want to be a druid. Great. It's all about giving the character the right gear, and maybe the DM could make up some kind of starter gear or starter reward or loot or even a spell or something to make that character feel like druidy, I guess. That still works within like the mechanics of the game. The real challenge comes in converting over higher level characters, because that can be daunting. My wife, for example, has got an 8th level druid, and she will not part with her 8th level druid. Not going to happen. So my idea for that is I'm going to take, okay, what are the things that are about your character that are coolest to you, and then take those things, those abilities, and so I take like these core abilities. Okay, her druid is a shapeshifter. Great. Maybe let's give her like a wisdom spell, beast form, right? And just put that as her loot. And she thinks that her ability to call lightning is really cool. Great, you've got that. Now, am I going to do that for every single one of her spells? No, because ICRPG is not that kind of game. You're not going to have 40 spells in your pocket that you can do at any time. You can only equip 10 things max, right? So in as far as converting over the characters, just take like a list of, I don't know, up to 10 things that you think are cool about your character, and then just like give the character those things, make some simple stats as the DM, as is your purview. Make those things up on the fly if you need to. Put them on the character sheet so they're represented. Make the player feel awesome, right? And so they don't feel bad about like losing a character. And you're golden. The easy part is converting over the encounters and adventures. That's already been laid out in like Hankerin's videos and like the DM section, ICRPG, and all that stuff like that. But and in fact, there are several people, myself included, who are going to be putting out a conversion guide. Not that I think it's necessary to have a printed guide, but I'm going to do one anyway because a lot of people have been like curious about it. So
you have 10 items, right, in ICRPG. So
and your pack,
yeah. So and they can be spells, they can be anything you want. So what are those things that make your character your character? So pick the stuff you like, and the way I would like frame it for my players is the least you pick, like instead of like 8 spells that you like, you pick 3. Well, you've got 7 other items that can improve those 3. So maybe the thing you prefer with your character is magic missile for some reason, and you like the fact that it can curves and like,
sure. It will find you.
Yeah, and maybe you like that, and you pick this, and then you're like, yo, I want to make a magic missile build. I don't care about like fucking acid splash.
Yeah, who wants acid splash?
So I'm gonna pick another item that doubles the range of my arcane spell, or that it gives your character more customization. Instead of having all the spells because you're a wizard, you only have the spells that you will actually use and that make your character your character. So and we were talking about casters, but if your fighter's got a sword that has a cool name, and yeah, you said that the fighter in your group had a sword, and then when you leveled up, you had to fight it.
Oh yes, you're talking about the blade called Legion. Legion is a sentient blade from the first age, and it's got the essence of all of its previous wielders throughout the ages, throughout the centuries, inside of it. And every time the character levels up, he's sucked into like an arena, and in the stands of the arena there are all of the representations. There's a warlock there, and there's a barbarian there, and there's a fighter clad in armor there. One of them in the arena will stand up and just kind of slowly walk down and challenge him, and if he wins that fight, Legion grants him a portion of that champion's strength, and if he loses, he dies. So it's pretty.
So what makes that the sword is part of D&D? Nothing. It can be an ICRPG,
Absolutely.
Like that's the beauty of it. You like second wind, you always use it. Well, it's an item now. It's not hard. Just pick some and improve them, or maybe pick a lot but don't improve them. It's your choice.
Sure.
And that worse than that, if the characters are really OP and they really like being OP, like they like slashing 10 goblins at once, like Alex said, well, give them more than 6 points, I guess. That's an alternative, or more items, or it's not something I would do, but I know some players love being like that, so that's
that is kind of a little bit of, there is a little bit of disparity if you're making new characters. There is a little bit of a power level disparity between D&D 5th edition and ICRPG. So, I mean, yeah. we can get into that later, though.
That's my 2 cents for that.
Well, first, how I understood the question was, how do you convince your players to play?
No, just like maybe that. Yeah,
I want to take it from that angle, and not because I know John and Alex have probably interesting ideas over that.
Yeah.
Well, negotiation can be hard because you have to arm yourself with weapons to negotiate with your players, because they're not all going to be compliant. And if you enter a battle with like a knife and your players have guns because they're like level 15, you're not going to win that fight. And you also don't have to be an asshole and be like, hey, I'm the GM, so I decide we're going to convert. You're probably not gonna.
You've just lost credibility.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, you can always tell them, look, playing D&D is time consuming for me, and if you guys want to have the same level of enjoyment and like make them feel empathic, like I pass a lot of time to design these things, and if we would go to ICRPG, I would have even more time to create even cooler ideas, because stats are easier and everything. So from that angle, that's how I would convince player. Like, dude, it takes me 8 hours, man, and I did a campaign of ICRPG. It took me an hour and a half. We can go and have beers afterwards. I'm not constrained to be a slave.
Why are we not doing that?
And so I had an idea. I thought Matthew was going to say it. Well, I'm going to say it anyway. How I see it is, if they're high, like let's say they're level 8 or level 15, make them choose 15 spells. If they're level 8, make them choose 8 spells. So depending on what level they have, convert their items into spells. And you have, let's say they have 15 spells. Well, there are 5 spells that they have to like swap and to equip.
Throw them in the backpack is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And then you can take these spells, and then you can create items to like do cool shit. Like Matthew talked about magic missile. Like, okay, every time you shoot magic missile and hit somebody, it has a chance to polymorph like two like adjacent creatures, or like crazy stuff like that. So I think I think it shit. I didn't say that what I hated about D&D. It's the lack of creativity, and it forces player to
conform to this.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
You must tell your players that before they create crazy shit, they will need strength and dex and basic stuff. They don't have to create only spells, because the +1 dex boots are freaking useful in ICRPG.
Yep.
So if you're high level, man, create them +2 dex boots. I don't care, but think about the stats. You need them.
Think of all the levels as like milestones, and just give them like, say, okay, if you're level 11, here's 11 things you can have. Some of them can be spells.
So
Actually, Mike reminded me something real quick about like the creativity of players with the system, and how that actually ties into the conversion of your characters with, like, say, creating new spells. I was just in the process of converting my players to ICRPG from 5th edition to run the Doom Vault adventure. One of them is a mage. 4th level, doesn't have a whole lot, but she does have Floating Disc. And it was a randomly rolled spell at player start. At first, she was kind of pissed that's what she had, but you know what? That was actually one of the most useful spells. I think she's she uses that so often and in such unusual ways. But the spell Floating Disc is like half a page in descriptions and restrictions and what it can do and how it operates and stuff like that. And like, well, I have to convert that to a sentence.
Sure.
You create a floating disc of solid energy near for 1d4 rounds. Int spell. And you know what? I like that because that gives her freedom to do interesting stuff with it. She hasn't yet, but I'm waiting for her to try to do awesome things with it, because then I get to be like, well, that's not that's going to be difficult. You're actually going to have to make like int checks for it not to fail, or things like that, so that they don't just plummet to the bottom of a chasm or something. But
she could use it like a destructive disc, like Krillin from Dragon Ball Z. Yeah,
just like a destructive disc, or try to use it as a shield to absorb damage, or try to expand it so it can hold more things on it. Like I'm waiting for her to try to use this for or use it to like raise stuff. I'm waiting for her to be creative.
Place a bomb on it and like send it off into the distance.
Exactly. and she's the kind of player that would do that if she had. So like, I'm excited for the potential there, and she's starting to get it. Now, so that's the thing. Like when you convert things like spells, really have that conversation with your players about your characters, that we're taking your favorite things about your character and we're converting them to the system. And it might seem like we're taking a whole bunch of stuff from it because we're taking, a page or like half a page or more and condensing it to a sentence. But trust me, we've just made it a ton more powerful because we put the power from the book into your hands.
Sure. And also, how many times have you really used mending? Just saying.
Well, that's the other thing too. It's like, you don't actually need this. You have never used this, so we're going to toss that away to the side. The other thing too is, like, when you're looking at converting your players, at least this is the way that I do it, is, and Matt, you said this and you said it great, throw classes out the window. Look at their play styles. Like, seriously, like if they're charismatic in their play style, doesn't matter what kind of class they are, ask them to look at the commander class and see if that's something that interests them. Like if they're a tank type player, like regardless of what class they do, have them look at regardless if they're like a regardless of what they are, have them look at the Guardian, or like DPS, have them look at a Blade. If they're a rogue or a thief, like have them look at a thief or the wildlings. The healer and mage, that's kind of self-evident, but like if they're like a druid or nature-focused thing, like look at the wildling. It's surprisingly similar to a druid in nature.
It is.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I like to have
add to that, but yeah.
I like to ask my players to describe their characters, like their character class, in 3 words, like sneaky human thief or retired dwarven soldier, because it tells you, just those words tells you a lot about what your direction is going in.
Yeah.
Converting.
Yeah. So the goal in converting a player character, is to preserve the essence of the character, not the class and not the powers. And in the process of preserving the essence. There are going to be, those 2 or 3, hot items that they really love about their character. Like my fighter, it's his magic sword. And I'm actually in the process of retooling that magic sword so that rather than rolling magic effort, it actually rolls double weapons. And he has to learn how to use the weapon in order to do that. And he can continue to learn it, and it just gets harder and harder. And he can increase the number of weapons effort dice that he can do it. Use it for.
Kind of like a replacement for like attunement, but actually more powerful.
Exactly. Because he had to work to get that sword. And just rolling magic effort, especially since, like, it doesn't make sense as a dwarf fighter for him to have points in magic. His points are in weapons. And so, like, I'm just making it like that. The floating disc for the mage, I had a paladin. I did something interesting with that. He does not have healing magic. I basically gave him an inspiration type power instead. So
he rallies his fellows.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that, the commander has that power. But I didn't want to make him a commander because he's more of a tank. So I actually made him a guardian, but with that power. So,
there's nothing in the ICRPG core that says you can't mix and match shit.
Don't be afraid to combine things. Don't be afraid to make new shit up. But here's where things get tricky, though, is when you have higher level characters, they tend to have a lot of hit points. And the hardest thing about converting a party to this system, I think, is the drastic reduction in health. So the way that I would see it is, 10 hit points is not a lot, but
no.
If you're converting if you're converting a party that's like under 4th level, just treat it like it's 1st level. Just give them 1 heart. But if you're converting them from like level 4 on up, what I would recommend is like a 3-to-1 ratio of hearts for tanks, DPS, and magic users. So at from like, I've got it somewhere here. So from like 4th to, I don't know, 7th level, magic users, so that would be like your healers and your mages would have 1 heart. Your DPS or your skills characters would have 2, and your tanks would have 3.
Interesting.
That's where my party is currently at. It works great. I can throw a ton at them. It's challenging, and they love it.
Cool.
Okay. So for, but for like, a mid-level party, so for like 8 to 15, mid to high, 8 to 15, you have your magic users at 2 hearts, your DPS at 4, and your tanks at 6. So they feel really powerful, but that's when you can start like hitting them with the black dragons and like the child of Adisatoth and not feel like you're going to wipe them out.
Sure.
And they don't feel like you're just stripping away their godlike powers. Because it's true, in 5e, you're...
All right, so how do you convert a 5e party to ICRPG? I've done it with my current group. Here is 3 easy steps if you'd like to do it yourself. Step 1, what is the level of your current players? If they're levels 1 to 3, even 1 to 5, I would suggest go ahead and try to convert them over to ICRPG. If they're beyond level 5, I think you just need to punt. Either finish out that story arc in 5e, or just give up and start over in ICRPG. Frankly, I think you should do that anyway. But I converted my group. They were only level 3. So that made it really easy. So step 2, how'd I go about it? Step 2 is, before I converted the characters, I had already started converting the mechanics. So we were already using a single target. We were already starting to reclassify turn order, or we'd already started to use turn order. we were already starting to use effort for non-combat tasks, things like that. The recovery mechanic, things like that I could pull in. I went ahead and pulled those things in. So mechanically, the game was basically playing like ICRPG. And then the last step is we started to convert the characters. Fortunately, I had all the character sheets, so I could do that on my own. But like most of my default, it came with conversation with my players. We sat down and we talked about it. And then, truthfully, there's no magic to this. I just went step by step, piece by piece. So hit points became hearts. If you had less than 15 hit points, that became 1 heart. If you had 15 or better, that became 2 hearts. We started to convert stats into bonuses. In some cases, I nerfed them slightly, but we basically kept them about the same. We started to convert weapons into simple categories of dice. That was perfect. We got rid of leveling. We started to convert attributes, abilities, and feats that you find in 5e, and we started to convert those into pieces of gear. So, for example, my thief really liked to hide in the shadows, so that became a special cloak that she had that allowed her to, that gave her a dex bonus for hiding in the shadows. I was fortunate in that I didn't have magic users in my group other than a homebrewed alchemist class, and I converted all of his recipes into basically scrolls. And if he lost them, then he just couldn't make those potions. So too bad. But this is what I'll have to say on that whole topic about spells. In every role-playing game I've ever played, this is what it's like. You're an awesome magic user, and you really want to do something cool like cast Fireball. Except that the spells available to you include speak with snails, create tree bark, and summon a compass. And it's like, really? Like, I have a magic user who's swinging a shard blade that he summons from mist and can slice through pure stone every round, but you're a magic user and all you can do is talk with snails. Like, it's ridiculous. If I'm a magic user, I want to be able to cast an awesome magic missile. I want to be able to spray acid out of my hand into somebody's face. I want to call down lightning.
Nobody wants to be Radagast.
Right? So truthfully, that is probably the thing that I like most about ICRPG is being able to pick some really useful spells to make your spellcasters as potent as your fighting classes. And so I would suggest that if you're going to do a conversion and leave out all those wonky spells, give your spellcasters some awesome stuff that's really going to make them shine at the table and really going to make them useful to the party. So that's my 3 easy steps. Figure out your party's level, start over straight in ICRPG or do the conversion. 2, slowly convert the mechanics, and then 3, convert your characters. And you should be good to go. Thank you, guys.
Cool, man. Cool. So